What's up, nerds? Welcome to another episode of The Bandwagon Fan. This is the show where we talk about all things pop culture and what we're into right now. I'm Josh.
I'm AJ.
And I'm doing the intro.
Oh, thank you for remembering this time. How's it going, man? How's your week been?
You?
Good,
been
man.
crazy. It's been crazy.
Yeah, I've been playing Harry Potter. Excuse me,
Nice.
Hogwarts Legacy. I don't know if you've heard some of the I guess you can say controversy around it, but there are people. There are people on the internet who are actively like, you shouldn't play it because J.K. Rowling is a transphobe, and there are people who are playing it and they're saying, hey, she owns the property, but she doesn't represent the community behind the property, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. That's the camp I'm in.
Yeah. And me too. I think it's not that big of a deal because the reality is you can't cancel J.K. Rowling because she owns the property. So no matter how much you hoot and shout and stomp your feet, she owns the property. So it's just easier to ignore her existence than it is to try to ignore Harry Potter.
I think you perfectly summarized it.
Yeah, man. It's so crazy. I think it's important though to like always understand that like not every author or writer is a reflection of their work. You know what I mean? Because in her case, right, Harry Potter's not about her life or her experiences, but in the comic that we're discussing today, I think you can say that that's an example of the opposite, right? Where there are probably parts of this work that are pulled from some level of reality from the writer's life, and I think that's what makes that work of art come to life. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with that. And like there's for those who don't know, Static, there's a legacy here. This isn't a new character.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, if you've never heard of the character Static, there's some history here. Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about Static Shock season 1. I did not know that this was kind of like a re-envisioning or
like a
reboot, I guess you could say. And admittedly, and probably disappointingly so, I don't know a ton about Static Shock as a comic character. I don't think Static is part of he's not part of the DC universe, right?
This time around, I don't think so. I think we need to like go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
To kind of explain like how we got to where we are now. Back in the early 90s, like late 80s, early 90s, there was this movement by some Black creators, comic creators, who wanted to create a publisher / imprint. It became an imprint that kind of diversified comics. They were typically, my stance, there's always a kernel of truth. There's often a kernel of truth to a stereotype. And so the stereotypical comic book reader was a white male.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that, but there are other people. I don't like to say people of color because it feels like a trap that somebody made to say colored. But there wasn't a lot of diversity in comics, and comic readers are a diverse group.
Right.
You get some people like Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cohen, a bunch of others that I'm totally blanking on right now, who created something called Milestone, and they created their own universe called the Dakotaverse, and it's in Dakota City, which I didn't know until recently is supposed to be representative of a Midwestern city.
Which city?
I'm not sure if they like specifically picked one, but it's just supposed to be like the Midwest.
Okay. I kind of figured as much from the comic.
Yeah, and so they created this thing called Milestone to create more diverse characters, and one of their most well-known characters was Static. And eventually DC picked up Milestone, and Milestone became an imprint of DC. So DC was publishing these comics.
Oh, okay.
And then after a time, I don't know the politics behind it, but a character like Static eventually entered the DC universe. And you would know more about this than I would, because I believe he's in Young Justice.
So I don't recall his character. So if he is in Young Justice, it may be a minor blip because they introduced so many characters to the show.
Okay.
And they cycle out basically the characters every season. Hey, every arc they cycle out characters within a season. So if he's in there, he may be referenced. If you remember, I explained earlier. I think on the podcast we talked about this before, that Young Justice spans across a couple of years.
Okay.
So
Right.
so that's one of the other things that factor to the
Yeah.
compilation of the Young Justice team. But yeah, I mean, I was a little confused because I wasn't sure, like, oh, is he still part of the DCU, or
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like that's where I was a little confused at first.
Yeah. So he was like he was in part of the New 52, which I haven't read, but I heard it wasn't that great.
Mm.
Um, and I forgot to mention Milestone eventually had shut down. Um, Unfortunate. People will speculate why that happened, but the reality situation is there was like the comic book, like there was like a bubble that burst, so a lot of
Yeah.
like things were failing. So it wouldn't be what some people might say is the reason they failed. Not going to give air to those to those speculations, because like it was a very successful, popular branding and like really cool characters. And uh, a couple years ago, it was announced that Milestone was going to return, and they were going to publish some Milestone stories under DC
Oh,
again.
so that's what the milestone returns thing on the top of the comic means. Okay.
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So this was like a comeback for Milestone, and as far as I know, it's set back again in the Dakota verse, and it does not cross over with the DC universe
But DC, there
for
is a
now.
DC logo on the comic, though. At least
If
on the
it,
season one comic. Yeah.
you're right, and as far as I know, Milestone is just an imprint, and so
Okay.
it's like basically DC is like, hey, we will print your stuff for you as long as you let us put our logo on it and stuff like that.
Okay.
And that a lot of companies will do this. There's like
Okay.
imprints of like a big publisher will print some smaller publishers too, and that's what brings us to Static season one. Not to be confused with Static Shock season one. Static
Right.
Shock was the TV
The
show,
TV
which is
show. Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Voiced by Phil Lamar, I believe, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, right?
Oh
Phil
wow.
Lamar.
Okay.
And then I think the Principal Lewis from American Dad was also on the show. I think he played the dad on that show too. So
Okay.
yeah. So a lot of prominent
There's
black voice actors on that show.
there is, and I believe it was Dennis Cohen. Maybe Dwayne McDuffie. I think Dwayne McDuffie as well. R.I.P. He passed.
Oh
I think like
wow.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
He wrote so many TV shows. He worked on Static Shock. He worked on Justice League Unlimited. He worked on Ben 10. He worked on a lot of DC animated
Oh, that's where
movies.
I know him from. Ben
Dude,
10. Yes,
dude
you're
was a
right.
goat.
Yeah, he wrote the yes, you're totally right. Forgot about that. Yeah, good call out. Good
That's
call
like
out.
that's one of the Milestone founders and one of the
Wow.
Static creators. So dude is goated in my book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so Milestone came back, and there was an initial issue called Milestone Infinite, and it kind of sets the background behind what the Dakota verse is going to be like this time around.
Sure.
And it starts off with a bang. No extra, sure, fine,
Well,
pun intended.
pun intended. Yeah, you could definitely say
There,
pun
there,
intended.
there's a bang, and a lot of people were very unhappy with how this story starts. Um, and
Well, I think well, okay, so let's get into it. So what Josh is referencing here is that if this is the big bang for this Dakotaverse series of comics, they all literally originate at the first what 5 pages of this comic,
oh yeah,
and it doesn't really go into too much detail. We're kind of brought into like the after effect, I guess, or like the end of the conflict, I guess you could say.
yeah,
um
but people take issue with like it's honestly like the first like page or two.
yeah, because it's a
So not to
police
beat around,
protest,
yeah,
it's
not
a
to beat around.
protest.
Well, it's a BLM protest,
BLM protest, yes,
and
yeah.
holy cow, did that trigger some snowflake people? And by
Oh really?
snowflake people, I mean the people who are against BLM. I'm using that snowflake term sarcastically. Holy cow, did
Well,
they say that comics had gone woke and political? Even that's always been a thing, but whatever.
yeah, that's been a cornerstone of comics for a very very long time. I think for starters, the context of this Now that I think about it, the really funny thing is that they don't really go into the details of pushing political agenda, right? In this comic series, right? The BLM protest is a backdrop, and it's supposed to give you an idea of who Virgil is. Virgil is Static, and it's supposed to give you a context of who he is and who his friends are and kind of what it's like being a 15, 16-year-old in this time. You know what I mean? And I think the funny thing is, do we get a clear context of why he was there? You know what I
So,
mean?
you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, there's like different
Because
reasons.
there's different
So there's
theories.
two main reasons. One reason is that he's being bullied at
Yes.
school. He's trying to hide
Yes.
from this
He's
bully
trying to hide from the
named
bully.
Francis.
Yeah.
The other thing is that this girl he likes, Frida, invited him to go.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a combination of the two. And
Yes.
honestly, like we talked about this with the whole Superman, the John Kent stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are mad about like that being quote unquote woke. If you think that, like, then the comic's not for you. Like,
Yeah.
and
I
that's
mean,
okay. Like, you can read other
it's
stuff.
not for you anyways, right? But I guess the point I was trying to make was that it's not even, it's just funny to see that people get mad when they see the words BLM. I have this joke that I share with my wife all the time that, like, there's this new thing happening now where, like, there are a certain group of Americans who associate the word black with woke. So every time they see something black on TV or something, they're like, oh, this is woke. Or,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to make this political. And it's like, it's just a black person on TV, or it's just a black person in a movie. Like, what about this is political? I don't understand. So it's just funny because out of the context, right? They don't ever really go, Virgil isn't a freedom fighter. At
He's
least
not an activist. He was
he's
just
not an
there to get
activist.
away
Yes.
and to be with his
Well,
crush.
and I thought that's one of the first things that I think the series did that mirrored really well his character arc. And it's not a very long. It's only 6 comics, right? The
Yeah. Yeah.
compilation. So it's only 6 comics of season 1, but you see the character arc where it's like, okay, whether he was hiding, being a coward, or whether he was only there for a girl, we see his character change by the end of this comic series, right? And so I thought that's a very unique way. And ultimately, it's about a black kid living in America, living in Midwest America. I mean, how many of these assaults on people of color? I mean, just in Tennessee, we had those 5 officers assault, and kill one man. You know what I mean? It happens in Middle America a lot more, at least that's televised. And so I think it's just trying to show a perspective of like, hey, you know what? This is the times we are in. And I think they used that backdrop really well.
Agreed. And that's what makes the story so grounded, because following the protest, you see Virgil with his family, and they're all trying to figure out how to help him in their own different ways.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is like you get a strong sense of the family dynamic here.
Yeah.
And I love that it's not the trope of like the quote unquote like broken.
There's no dad. Yeah, there's no dad in the home. Mom's on crack or whatever.
Right.
The sister's got 7 baby daddies, whatever. Like, it's none of that. You know what I mean? They're a modern nuclear family, and they love each other very much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but like it's not sugarcoated. They're not a perfect family.
No.
Like his dad is like real hard lined about like we need to do this, we need to do that. His mom has the other perspective.
Very much in the vein of like a old school like black activist type of thing, where he's like, we have to defend ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, he's very like very I don't want to say paranoid, but he's just very conscious of his family and protecting his family. You know what I mean?
And like, I mean, he should be. Like,
yeah.
I don't blame him. And then on the flip side, his mom like very much wants to protect her child, but she's a doctor, so she wants to take the more scientific approach.
Right.
And then his sister Sharon, like, she's kind of in the middle. Like, she's like a really nice like medium, like middle ground between the mom and the dad and Virgil. And I like the fact that they get along.
Yeah, they're family. They feel like a real family.
Virgil and Sharon.
Yes.
Like their dynamic is really cool because like a lot of times you see a depiction of siblings where like they hate each other.
Yeah.
And like I mean they like hound each other in the series, but like you could like they very clearly love each other, and she's the older sister, and like she very clearly takes that role seriously in a realistic way, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that goes to show kind of where his state of mind is, because in the beginning of the comic, this big bang, because I don't know if we really explained it, but we can kind of get into that. But during that protest, the police used experimental gas to try to diffuse the crowd. Now the police didn't know what the gas was going to do. They were only given it to use as a force, and we kind of get snips and pieces of kind of that this was like a test subject that had gone wrong, and this bang mutated a lot of the people in the crowd. A lot of the well, not all of them were protesters. Just anyone who was in the vicinity of the smoke got mutated, and some of them died. Some of them were horribly disfigured, and some of them gained supernatural powers. And so Static is, or Virgil, I should say, is coming out of this, I guess, a recovery period at the beginning in the first issue, and he's angry. He's real angry because he's I mean, it's traumatizing. It's really traumatizing to experience something like that at his age, and everyone in his family is trying to figure out how to help him, and he doesn't like that feeling of being helpless. You know what I mean?
And an escape for a lot of people would be school. You go see your friends. That's not the case for Virgil. Francis, his bully, is there, and for some reason, Francis really hates Virgil for not being black enough, because Virgil is a nerd. He's a nerd.
I laughed at this part because growing up, as for those who don't know, listening to the podcast, I grew up. I went to private school, right? I know I don't sound like your depiction of what a black person sounds like. You have no idea how many times growing up people told me things like, "Hey, you sound really white," and then I would say, "What does a white person sound like?" And they said, "Well, come on, you know what I mean?" And I'm like, "No, explain to me. What does a white person sound like?" I have met kids in my life who love to try to tell me that they are more black than I am. And the reality is, I laughed at Francis's character because not only is he like the most annoying white person, the white person who thinks they are more black than a black person, but then on top of that, he's a total D-bag. And he was at the protest because he was looking for Virgil, right?
Yeah.
Is that essentially what it was or whatever? So he also got powers as well. And so, the second Virgil and Francis see each other, it's on sight. You know what I mean? It's on sight, and they start to fight.
And Virgil, with his powers, he can control electricity. They don't explain it a whole lot. And he can throw hands now, and he almost kills Francis. And if it were not for the fact that his friends, Richie and Frida, were there, he probably would have killed Francis. And it causes him to pause, to be like, okay, I need to figure this thing out. And there's further complications where one of his old friends, Darius, is trying to expose what the government's doing with the Bang Babies, or kidnapping people. Darius kind of comes and goes in the series. He was the adopted friend that would always hang out with Virgil, and they've kind of had a falling out. And then Derek, the football player, the star of the school, takes credit for beating up Francis. And again, Frida and Richie are really worried about Virgil, and what's going on with him, who is he becoming, what happened to him, and again, back with his family, later at dinner, they still have the parents have different approaches to the situation. And again, Sharon, his sister, I love, she points out, she's like, hey, he's 16, he should have a say in this. He should be included in this conversation. This isn't let your mother
and I talk about he's here in the room. Yeah,
he is old enough. He's a young man now. Let's bring him into this conversation. And then who shows up? Francis shows up at the Hawkins home and lights it on fire.
Wants revenge after a fight with Virgil. Out of sheer pettiness, he tries to burn down the house. But Virgil, which is also something I kind of missed, so I had to reread again. But I didn't catch that Virgil was part of the experiment, maybe unknowingly, for the tear gas stuff, or the special, the science gas stuff. I didn't catch that he was. Yeah. So okay, so if we rewind a little bit, one of the, what I think what's kind of cool is that there's like many like cutscenes in some of these comic series, and one of them in the beginning, if you remember, was that scientist Dr. Metcalf. Remember?
Yeah.
And they're in a boardroom, and one of the ladies, or he says something along the lines of it. I'm abbreviating here, and again, I may have misinterpreted it, but he's basically saying like, oh, well, this isn't going to look good because it's going to look like I let an unqualified black kid who only got into a program because he's black be the catalyst for this catastrophe. And someone says, yeah, obviously. And later, as we find out, Virgil does have a relationship with that doctor because he's part of like a STEM program for kids. So so we'll get into a little bit more. But like, again, I had to reread it because I'm like, oh, because that's how he gets the suit. Right? Do you remember that part? Okay, so that's so that's how he gets the suit because he worked with him on the project. But he doesn't know the gap. I think what's going on here is that he doesn't understand that the project he was working on is the reason why he has the powers in the first place.
Okay, so I missed that part.
Yeah, so I'm inferring this because if you kind of read, I had to reread it because I was like, wait a minute, am I missing something? And I reread it, and I'm like, oh, I think he was part of it because he even made a, let's continue through the story, right? Because
if you're listening, we'll explain.
Yeah, we'll explain later. A little bit more, but essentially, Francis gets taken. This part I didn't super understand how he got taken, but Josh had mentioned earlier that Darius is trying to show like what the government's doing to bank babies, and finds out that there's this character named Holocaust. I don't even think we see his powers. Do we ever see Holocaust's powers?
Not really, no.
Okay, we don't see Holocaust's powers, but he's this guy, and he's trying to galvanize the all the people who've been affected by the Big Bang, and trying to start his own army. But before he can do that, it gets broken up, and a bunch of these people get taken by the government, right? Simultaneously, Virgil calls Dr. Metcalf and trying to ask him for help. He ends up in Dr. Metcalf's lab, and he takes the suit. And the suit can manipulate metal. It's the suit that does it, right? Or it allows him to channel that power better, I think.
It's just supposed to be like a protective suit, and then he also found it was like a kinetic metal.
Yeah.
Which it gets explored a little bit later.
Right.
And then and then the cops show up.
Yes.
They think Metcalf did something, and
Well, if you remember in the beginning of the series when that boardroom scene happened, Metcalf goes home and he's like, they're gonna try to pin this on me.
Yeah.
And we see him suit up, and he looks like Kang the Conqueror in his like suit, and we don't know what happened to him. You know what I mean? So we're like, yo, what just happened?
I believe he's supposed to be the Milestone character Hardware.
Oh, okay.
Who has his own comic series, and he's about to have a secondary series where he fights another Milestone character named Rocket.
Is he a hero or a villain?
I think he's supposed to be an anti-hero.
I feel okay because they set him up like an anti-hero because he was like, I'm out.
Yeah. But wait, or is it him? Because I think we see him later on because the cops show up. I don't even remember that one guy, and they're like, "What are you wearing?" He's like,
yes.
"Oh, you came to an unarmed." Okay,
that's what I'm referencing. Yeah, that's what I'm referencing. That at least in my version, that was like kind of in the beginning. That was like it was kind of like stitched in between, kind of
flipped back and forth,
which I like. I like that. I like that it's stitching these stories together for you to put it together. But anyways, when he gets the suit and he figures out he can manipulate metal, he makes a comment basically saying, oh, think like whatever the equivalent of their STEM program is. And that's why I put it together. I'm like, oh, I think he's a student of Dr. Metcalf, which also, and I'm just totally like tinfoil hat AJ. You guys know how I like to do that. But tinfoil hat AJ, I think the reason he survived the gas in the first place is because he already was a subject of the experiment. And he doesn't know that. Okay. That's my theory, because I find it very weird that like Dr. Metcalf would have these things specifically for Virgil. How would he have these things if he didn't know what those things would manifest? You see what I'm trying to say? Like it all just seemed very matter of fact, very ex machina. Like he pops into the lab, he gets a suit. The suit just so happens to allow him to help him boost his powers. I think we'll find out, and this is the theory. I could be way off, but I think what we'll find out in later series is that like Dr. Metcalf maybe as a nefariously like was testing on Virgil. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To some
Oh, dude,
degree.
I'll put that tinfoil hat on too, because
Yeah.
I'm like 90% sure he is the character Hardware, and
Yeah.
like he's supposed to be like a more militant, like, I mean, remember when this is written? This is written like in the 90s, by like Dennis Cowan and Dwayne McDuffie, and I do wonder if there's supposed to be like some sort of like a militant, like, like the Black Panther, Malcolm X type of thing of like,
Right.
I'm a black man, I'm tired of being
Almost,
oppressed, I'm going
almost
to
like
fight
a
back.
almost like a Magneto character.
Yes,
Yeah, you know what I mean?
which is supposed to be like Malcolm X. If people don't
Right.
know, if you don't
Right,
like
right.
politics in your
Exactly.
comics, Magneto's Malcolm X, Professor X is MLK. So
Right.
if you didn't know that, now you do.
Now you know. If you don't know, now you know.
And,
So
and,
yeah,
oh,
so this part I was, and by the way, can I just comment? I love the way this comic is drawn, by the way. It's drawn
yes.
incredibly, by the way. It's the scenes where like he's using his powers. I'm like, yo, that's crazy. It's a crazy
Yeah.
like way to depict these things, but it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Um and after this point, we find out that the location that Holocaust had brought all the Bang Babies. Francis rats them all out in exchange for I guess clemency. Really, that's what he's after, and becomes like a
A
government. Yeah,
Yeah.
becomes a government goon because, well, we're saying government. We technically don't know they're part of the government, right?
But you kind of know.
Right, yeah. So
know.
yeah, we kind of make the assumption. So he makes a deal. He says, "Hey, I know where to find more Bang Babies in exchange for clemency, aka Virgil." And so they go to the school. They're looking for Virgil. They go to his house, and we get an awesome moment where Mrs. and Mr. Hawkins are like, get out of our house. Like, you don't even have a warrant. We don't even know you. And like, I love like the chirp from the neighborhood be like, yo, isn't that the kid that burned down the house? And you're supposed to be the good guys? That made me laugh. I was like,
no, like it's such like there's zero superheroing happening, and it's one of my favorite scenes, especially his mom. His mom does not mess around. She's like,
she's badass.
Need to get out of here. And she makes a comment earlier about to the father. And like, I love it. Like, it's a healthy relationship because she checks him because he's like, oh, like, we can't trust doctors, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, excuse me, I'm a woman and I'm black. Like, I know what it's like for the medical field for people like us.
Well, yeah.
Statistically, I don't have this experience, but like black women have typically, like, statistically, like, poor experiences in the healthcare system.
My brother is currently in med school, and his whole thesis for his med school is how medicine is heavily skewed differently for people of color, specifically black women. Yeah,
good for him.
That's his whole. That's his shout out to Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler, way to go.
A little genius. But anyways, he's but it could, because it's true. You'd be surprised in 2023. In 2023, right? That's when we're release this episode. The things that kids are still being taught in medical school, and there are still certain branches of medicine that have this belief that black people, for example, can experience more pain than other people of color. Yes, I'm not lying. It's that's real stuff, and that's just one of many things, right? So that scene was even more poignant when you look at it from the perspective that, like, statistically, black and brown people are less trusting of medicine than anyone else, and that scene is supposed to basically show the mindset of both, his mom and his dad, and that they're a team, but they do definitely have two different ways of achieving their goals and their missions. Like Mr. Hawkins is always like, we got to train, and she's always like, okay, well, let's find the problem. Like, they have two different ways of doing things. I love that. That's how my family is. So
that's how it should be. And so, like, that was earlier. And like, to go back to the current situation we were talking about, like, she tells the government goons, like, go.
Yeah.
You don't belong here.
Yeah.
And it's like one of my favorite scenes in the whole series, to be honest.
Yeah, it
was
like
great. Little moments, like family moments.
Well, I love that moment where like Virgil's kind of like sighing of relief. You know what I mean? Like it's a little moment, but it's like, as a hero, we're so used to like other heroes having other hero people around them to help them, and it's nice to see that like he's counting on regular his family. You know what I
His
mean?
parents,
That's,
yeah.
you know, his parents. You know what I mean? Like that's they're the biggest heroes in his life if you look at it from that perspective. So that was a great scene. I like that scene a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. People who do their best to parent their children, like you're the real heroes out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then after following that, Virgil's kind of messing around with that kinetic metal that he had. Um, and like we don't really know what it is. Like again, it feels like like you were saying that the Metcalf. Like, why would you leave that specifically there?
Yeah.
Because it's very apparent like this was made for Virgil to be able to use. He can like use it to like as like a
To do a
saucer to
lot of
fly
things.
on. He can make
Yeah.
armor, weapons, like whatever. He can do all sorts of stuff. And then he decides he's like, okay, like I need to do something now. And he reaches out to Darius, the friend he had a falling out with, and he's like, hey, like let's try to figure out what's going on with the Bang Babies. Like, where are they being taken? And then after that, his sister Sharon pops up, and she's like, hey, like she's very real about it. She's like, hey, like I
Yeah.
know like what you can do. I know what you're about. And she's a paramedic. And she's like, here, like I know like how your powers kind of work. That this family is very intelligent. Virgil, and I don't think we had mentioned this earlier. Virgil is a nerd,
Yeah.
and he's able to do so many cool things with his powers because he understands the science behind his powers. Like he's not guessing; he's using science to learn and to work with his powers. And his sister recognizes that too, and so she gives him these glucose tablets and a jacket. She's like, "Hey, like you can use these to recharge." And so, he's got his kit ready to go. He's got his costume, which is a throwback to the old Static
Old Static.
comic
Yeah.
costume. And he goes, and Richie and Frida decide to come and help out too. They're all suited up, looking like,
They're ready.
yeah, yeah, they're
Yeah.
ready to go. And then we have Hot Streak versus Static.
Hot Streak is Francis. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't
That's
mention
his
that.
that's his street name now. Hot
Yeah,
Streak.
well, that he gave to
He
himself,
gave to himself fittingly. Yes. Very fittingly.
to which Virgil says that's weak. And he barbecues Virgil.
Yeah. Right in the face. Yeah. It's a pretty good scene though. Again, this is all drawn beautifully, so I highly recommend checking out the comic just for the artwork alone because it's nuts.
Yeah, we can't do it justice.
Yeah, we can't do it justice. But Hot Streak's ability to create fire around him, and I guess Virgil, same thing. It creates electricity around him. It looks awesome. It looks awesome on the comic. I'm like, this would look crazy animated, by the way. If it was like animated as a TV show, like that would look really cool. Like,
Yeah.
and I know that this may not sound like it makes sense, but a lot of the ways they do like the Japanese animation now, where it's like high frame rate scenes, like this would really work for something like that. So,
Well, and it's funny you said that because something I was going to say later on is that what I really like about the art style. You have multiple artists working on this.
yes.
But throughout a lot of it, there's like this anime manga feel to it.
Yes, yeah,
Such a cool aesthetic.
That's exactly what I mean. I'm like, dude, this would be so cool as an anime, but I don't know
how dude, that would.
Yeah, but it would be really, really cool because it's like some of those scenes. I'm like, this is drawn incredibly.
Which is also fitting because Virgil is a fan of anime.
Yeah,
and his dad got him into anime, and his dad was a fan of anime in like the 80s. So like his dad's like an OG nerd too.
Yeah.
So let's say like the style fits the story.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. But yes, Virgil in his fight uses the the glucose tabs, and it allows him to just like heal, which I guess they'll explain at some point because he definitely got his like face burned off, right? So like
they kind of explain it a little bit.
Yeah.
That like the glucose, so his powers run on like his blood sugar and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so the glucose kind of gives him a boost of that, which allows his powers to like kind of like jumpstart his body's natural healing factor.
Yeah.
And because he took the glucose tablets, it's like over 9,000.
Okay, so like another tinfoil hat thing. Maybe it's in there, and I just missed it. But if you remember in the beginning when the people got tear gas, Virgil actually describes it like your face is melting off. You remember that?
Yeah.
And so I think one of the other reasons why I think he may have already had the powers, and that's why he didn't die in the gas attack, is because the 2 weeks he didn't go to school, I think that was the time his body like regenerated.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like that's my theory, at least, right? Because when you think about it, that's what the glucose tabs is essentially trying to emulate, that regeneration.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just tinfoil hat, but if that's true, that's really cool. That's a cool callback.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, powers over 9,000. He's good to go. And during this time, Frida and Richie are freeing the Bang Babies who are in captivity. Virgil and his friends disarm um, a group of Bang Babies who are actually working for the government. They took a deal, kind of like Francis, and they tried to fight Virgil and his friends.
Yeah.
They're able to disarm them, and then he kind of goes Super Saiyan, and
Yeah.
like I think he basically just like EMPs the
I think
building,
yeah, basically he was an EMP to the building. Correct. I think so too.
and
Yeah.
then after that the news and like again like this is like some people are gonna say it's woke, some people are gonna realize that it's the reality of what happens that the news agencies are trying to spin what happened in a certain direction,
Right.
and this goes both ways. And in this instance, they're saying how the Bang Babies are thugs, they're rioters, they destroyed this building. And then Virgil's like, no, not letting that happen. So apparently he can
He can
superimpose himself
put
over
himself in
the
yeah,
TVs.
which that's a crazy power. He can, well, you know what? That's not true because he did say when he's supercharged, he's like, I'm the
Yeah,
machine guy,
I'm the
whatever.
god. I'm the god in the machine.
And God in the machine or something like that.
What's
Yeah.
that from?
I don't know. I can't remember, but I think what he did in that moment was figure out a way to tap into stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that manifests. You know, is he just like Star Wars throwing his vision or throwing his body in another location just to talk to people, or can he actually teleport that way? That'd be kind of cool. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Then we
But
get
yeah,
this. We oh sorry, we're gonna.
no, you got it.
So we get a scene after that where the lead government honcho that was in charge of stuff going on, he is in his room. He's like, okay, like I gotta fix the situation, and then he hears this voice, and basically it looks like the shadows in his room kill him or attack
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
Did you? I don't know. I forgot to ask. Did you ever watch the Static Shock show?
No, I never watched the show.
Okay.
So I feel like that was a reference to something because I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a character from just the show, if it was from the comics too.
Okay.
But like, if you have seen the show, maybe read the old comics, it's a reference to like a very significant character, at least from
Okay.
the show. And
Okay.
so like when I first saw that, I was like, yo, and you know what? Um, actually, yeah, I'll go on more about that character in a minute. So yeah, this guy gets got by the shadows in his room.
Right.
And then the story concludes where Virgil and his family are having dinner, and this time it's his friends, and you kind of get the sense of like this is like a very normal thing for them,
Yeah.
and even Darius is back, like he used to be there for
Yeah,
dinner,
he used to be the friend. He
been
used to be the
invited
friend.
back,
Yeah, he's back. He's back in the fold.
and they're kind of just hanging out eating dinner, and then Virgil's phone, he gets a notification from a program that Darius made that tags like when a Bang Baby's in trouble, and so Virgil's like, all right, I gotta go, and he leaves and reveals the gift that his sister gave to him, which is a new costume, which kind of seemed like a throwback to the
The
Static Shock
static
costume in a
shock.
way,
Yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, and that's how it ended.
and that's how it
Yeah,
ended.
it was well for now.
But yeah, so that was season one.
Yeah.
Kind of like some closing thoughts about that is I loved the Hawkins family dynamic. It feels real. Like I was like, I want to be in that family.
Yeah.
It
No.
feels real.
Yeah.
It's healthy. And then the art and character designs are unlike anything I've seen in so many comics. Like I said, it was like an anime manga style, and then all the character outfits, like even like the quote unquote civilian outfits,
Yeah.
they felt like they were like models on a runway. Like
Right.
everyone looks so good and so cool.
Right. I really enjoyed this. You know, origin stories are a dime a dozen nowadays, you know, but I feel like this did it in a way where it doesn't come off cheesy, you know. I think it almost did it a service to not go into like this is exactly why his powers do this and this and stuff like that. And it's more just about really him just getting over that trauma. And, you know, from the beginning of the comic, he's angry and let's be honest, he's afraid. He's tired of getting pushed around all the time. And at the end, we see him, you know, start to learn to embrace that, you know, the age old, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So I liked it. I thought it was really, really cool. I can't wait to read more, you know, because you know, I think this has a lot of potential. There were so many different threads. We didn't really learn what the ATF is up to. We don't know what happened to Francis. We still don't know what happened to Dr. Metcalf. Where is he going? There's so many things we need to know the answers for. So I can't wait.
Yeah, and to me, like this is a new hero from a new generation, and like you know, for the comic industry to survive, like we need new heroes, and it's important to like make things contemporary.
Yeah.
And like a character like this, it's a young black man who, you know, is part of a protest at the beginning, and like he's kind of dealing with school and just all these other issues are very important. And I was explaining to a customer at my comic store like why a character like this is necessary
Yeah.
because he was like, you know, like they try to like make these legacy characters where there's like a black Batman and a black this or that. And I was like, that's because there's other characters, and I mentioned Static, who like that's what that role is trying to fill right there is like creating something
New.
unique right there. And if
Yeah.
people don't read it, it's not going to continue to be published.
Right.
And he was listening, like we were talking for a little bit. He's like, you know what? He's like, I really appreciate you saying that. He's like, I never thought about it that way. And so yeah, just my little spiel that like this kind of story is important. Like, please buy these kinds of stories so they can be out there.
Yeah.
And there is going to be a season 2 of Static, and it's confirmed that that shadow thing, little spoiler, is going to be Ebon, who was the big bad from the Static Shock TV show.
Okay. Okay.
So, and that first issue is out, so you can go pick it up at your local comic store. Go support your local comic store, and read a story that explores so many things like racism, police brutality, sexism, government abuse. And what's really cool is like all the nods to like what came before, to like Dwayne McDuffie, R.I.P., to Dennis Cohen. So go check this out. Totally on board on the bandwagon for season 2, which is out now.
Yeah, I'm not a big comic book reader, but I enjoyed reading this a lot, and I'm definitely probably going to check out more of these series. So yeah, I'm on the bandwagon as well. And let's wrap up our show, guys. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, let us know. You can follow us on any social media platform: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I think those are our most used ones. If you liked our podcast, you know, let us know. If you're on Anchor/Spotify, leave us a like. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Google Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcast from. That's where we are. Thanks for listening. See you next time. The Bandwagon Fan Podcast is hosted by Josh Jimenez, Alex Malgosa, and me, AJ Soy. Our show is produced by Kate Smith and edited by your boy, AJ. Our social media is managed by Natalia Kokulia, and our theme song, Lush Waves, is provided to us by Taylor Lewin of _audio. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.